We tend to think of plants as, well, pretty simple, right? But what if I told you they're running this incredibly complex internal world? I'm talking safety valves, huge, costly mistakes, and this amazing recycling system to clean it all up. Today, we're going to peek behind the curtain, go way beyond photosynthesis, and uncover some really surprising secrets about how plants actually work.
Okay, so let's start with a puzzle. Just imagine the single most important machine in a plant's entire life. The one that literally builds everything it needs. Now, what if that machine suddenly went haywire, and instead of making food, it started churning out poison? Sounds like a total disaster, right? But believe it or not, the way plants deal with this exact crisis, well, that reveals this incredible hidden layer of complexity.
So to really get how they pull this off, we have to look past the whole making energy thing for a second. We need to focus on how plants use that energy. This is a story all about managing power, what happens when things get overloaded, and yeah, cleaning up some really big messes.
Okay, first things first. Plants, just like us, have a standard power grid. It's this system for turning fuel into usable energy. It's basically the universal engine of life. We call it cellular respiration, and it is at the absolute heart of everything a plant does. And this whole operation, it happens inside a tiny, very specific part of the cell.
And that powerhouse is the mitochondrion. You can think of it like a microscopic factory, and it's got this really efficient two-stage assembly line. Its one and only job is to take in fuel and just crank out something called ATP. And ATP, well, that's the universal energy currency for pretty much all life.
So stage one of this assembly line is called the citric acid cycle. It's kind of like a disassembly line, really. A fuel molecule called pyruvate comes in, it gets systematically broken down, and all that good energy gets loaded onto these special carrier molecules. Now, you get a tiny bit of ATP here, but honestly, this is just the opening act.
All right, now for the main event, the electron transport chain. This is where the magic happens. Those energy carrier molecules from stage one, they show up and drop off their high-energy electrons. These electrons then power a whole series of pumps, creating this really powerful gradient, like building up water behind a dam. And that pressure drives a tiny molecular turbine that just churns out massive amounts of ATP. It's literally like a hydroelectric dam, but on an impossibly small scale. So this whole system is just amazingly efficient. But what happens when it gets overloaded? When the assembly line gets backed up and the whole system is just teetering on the edge of a total meltdown? Well, plants have this absolutely ingenious solution. They've built in an emergency bypass. It's a kind of metabolic shortcut called the alternate oxidase pathway, or AOX, and it basically acts like a pressure release valve for the whole system.
And this is the really cool part. The main pathway, its whole goal is to make ATP, right? That energy currency. But this alternate pathway, it just skips that step completely. Instead of making useful energy, it just vents all that excess energy as heat. It's such a clever way to keep the whole system from overloading.
Okay, so we've seen how plants deal with an energy overload. But what about a totally different kind of problem? I'm talking about a crisis that strikes at the very heart of photosynthesis, and it's all caused by one costly, simple mistake made by one of its most important players.
All right, so let's talk about the hero of photosynthesis, an enzyme called rubisco. Rubisco has one job, just one: grab carbon dioxide out of the air. Simple enough, but here's the thing. Sometimes it messes up. It gets confused and grabs an oxygen molecule instead. And that might sound like a tiny little slip-up, but the consequences? Oh, they are huge.
This one little mistake triggers a whole cascade of problems called photorespiration. And what it does is create a toxic compound instead of the useful sugars the plant needs to live. It's super wasteful, it burns a ton of energy, and it's a problem the plant has to solve, like right now.
And here it is, the culprit: 2-phosphoglycolate. It's a totally useless, toxic compound, a complete metabolic dead end. The plant can't do anything with it, and worse, it can actually shut down other essential machinery in the cell, so it has to go fast. So the big question is, how does a plant deal with a poison that it made itself? Well, it launches this incredibly elaborate cleanup mission. Think of it like a high-stakes salvage operation to go in and rescue the valuable carbon atoms that are trapped inside this toxic molecule.
This whole rescue mission is called the C2 cycle, and it's not simple. It's this winding journey that travels across 3 completely separate compartments inside the cell. So let's follow the trail and see exactly where it leads.
All right, our journey starts in the chloroplast. You could call it the scene of the crime, since this is where the mistake happened.
The plant immediately does some chemical first aid, converting that toxic compound into something a little more manageable, and then it ships it out for the next stage of processing.
Okay, next stop on the tour, the peroxisome. When the molecule gets here, it undergoes even more changes. It's kind of like it's being prepped and detailed, getting all ready for the final and most important step in the process.
And at last, the molecule arrives back at the mitochondrion. Yep, the same powerhouse from earlier. And this is where the big payoff happens. Two of these processed molecules get combined, a single molecule of CO2 is released, and here's the key part. One useful molecule is created that can jump right back into the photosynthesis cycle. Mission accomplished. The rescue is complete.
So think about that for a second. After all that work, this super complex, energy-guzzling journey across 3 different parts of the cell, the plant manages to salvage an incredible 75% of the carbon that would have just been lost. It's an amazing testament to the power of evolution and just how resilient life can be.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, it's that plants are just so much more complex than we ever give them credit for. They've got their main power grid, sure, but they also have this emergency safety valve and an incredibly sophisticated recycling system for when things go wrong. They aren't just passive green things sitting there. They are dynamic, adaptable chemical engineers constantly tweaking their systems to survive.
And you know what? We've really only just scratched the surface of this hidden world inside of plants. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secret, complex engines are quietly running our planet right under our noses? And maybe, just maybe, what can we learn from them to solve some of our own challenges?